What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, please jump on over to DJLittleRock.com. Come on by. The water's fine. I don't know. If it's a pool party, maybe the water's fine. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you can have me at your next event. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous? Use the hashtag What Makes You Famous and find it everywhere. What makes you smarter? Well, let's find out. Let's do it together right here on the program. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Tuesday, February 18th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Virginia lawmakers block assault weapons ban. Virginia state senators on Monday rejected Governor Ralph Northam's Democrat push to ban the sale of assault weapons, with 4 moderate Democrats on the state Senate Judiciary Committee joining Republicans to shelve the bill. Northam has tried to use his party's new majorities in both houses of the state legislature to pass a broad package of gun control laws. Quote, "We will be back next year," end quote, Northam's spokeswoman, Elena Yarmosky, said. Democrats campaigned promising tough gun restrictions last year and won control of the General Assembly for the first time in more than 2 decades. Their attempt to follow through has met pushback, with tens of thousands of gun rights advocates protesting at the Capitol last month and more than 100 local governments declaring themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries. This is according to the Associated Press. Number 2, expert predicts China's coronavirus outbreak will soon plateau. China reported 98 more deaths from coronavirus on Tuesday and 1,886 new infections, bringing the death toll in mainland China to 1,868, with more than 72,000 confirmed cases. A widely respected neurologist, Liu Ziming, died despite a, quote, full effort rescue, end quote, according to the Health Commission in Wuhan, the city in Hubei province that is the epicenter of the outbreak. 8 frontline healthcare workers have now died from the flu-like virus. Chinese pulmonologist Zhong Nanxian, who is heading a team of experts managing the outbreak, predicted the number of infections will peak by late February and plateau, with infections remaining high for a while before finally falling. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 3, Boy Scouts of America files for bankruptcy over sex abuse costs. The Boy Scouts of America announced that it filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection early Tuesday as it faced mounting legal costs in hundreds of sexual abuse assaults. The reorganization will include it establishing a trust to compensate victims. Quote, "While we know nothing can undo the tragic abuse that victims suffered, we believe the Chapter 11 process with the proposed trust structure will provide equitable compensation to all victims while maintaining the BSA's important mission," end quote. BSA President and CEO Roger Mosby said in a statement. The bankruptcy filing could set a deadline for former scouts to pursue new claims. Quote, "If you've ever considered coming forward, now is the time," end quote, said Tim Kosnoff, a member of a team of lawyers who created an abused in scouting victims group. This is according to the New York Times and NPR. Number 4, Apple says coronavirus outbreak will hurt revenue. Apple said Monday that it was cutting sales expectations for the current quarter, citing slowed production and weak demand in China due to the coronavirus outbreak. Last month, Apple projected record revenue for this quarter between $63 billion and $67 billion. The coronavirus outbreak originated in Wuhan, China, home to two of Apple's top 200 suppliers. Most of Apple's products are assembled in China, and the company said there would be a temporary global shortage of iPhones since factory closures hindered production. The announcement, quote, confirms the worst fears that iPhone impact was going to be more dramatic than expected, end quote, said Daniel Ives, managing director of equity research at Wedbush Securities. Apple was the first major U.S. company to reveal how the coronavirus outbreak had affected business. This is according to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. Number 5, Amazon's Bezos creates $10 billion fund to fight climate change. Amazon founder and CEO Jeff Bezos announced Monday that he was forming the Bezos Earth Fund and providing $10 billion to fight climate change. The money will go toward grants to scientists and activists. Quote, climate change is the biggest threat to our planet, end quote, Bezos said on Instagram. Quote, I want to work alongside others, both to amplify known ways and explore new ways of fighting the devastating impact of climate change on this planet that we all share, end quote. The establishment of the fund was the latest in a series of environmental commitments by Bezos. Amazon last year made a, quote, climate pledge, end quote, committing the company to shift to renewable electricity by 2030. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 6, Taliban leader says peace deal with U.S. to be signed this month. A senior Taliban leader reportedly said Monday that the Islamist group had reached a peace deal with the U.S. and that, quote, both sides have agreed to sign the agreement by the end of this month, end quote. The Washington Post reported that the Taliban official, Mullah Abdul Salam Hanafi, said in a video shared with journalists that, quote, both sides have initiated the final draft of the peace agreement. Now talks are concluded, end quote. The report marked the first Taliban statement since the U.S. announced on Friday that it had completed negotiations with the Taliban on establishing peace in Afghanistan. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Saturday that the Trump administration had not yet finalized a date for the beginning of a 7-day, quote, reduction in violence, end quote, intended to precede the signing of the deal. This is according to the Washington Post and The Hill. Number 7, at least 20 refugees in rush for relief supplies in Niger. At least 20 people were killed in Niger on Monday as refugees from neighboring Nigeria rushed to get food, clothes, and money being distributed at a community center. Another 10 people were injured. Some of the victims were children. The stampede erupted when the gates to the facility were open. The aid was provided by the visiting governor of Nigeria's Borno state. There are almost 250,000 displaced people in the area, according to the United Nations. Many of the refugees have fled attacks by the Islamist extremist group Boko Haram and other armed militant groups. This is according to the BBC News and Reuters. Number 8, Bloomberg qualifies for his first debate. Former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg on Tuesday qualified to participate in his first Democratic presidential primary debate with 19% support in an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll. The business media millionaire earned a spot in the February 19th debate in Las Vegas. Former Vice President Joe Biden, former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, and Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat Minnesota, Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, and Elizabeth Warren, Democrat Massachusetts, also qualified. Candidates can qualify by earning 10% support in 4 national polls or winning at least one delegate from the Iowa caucus or the New Hampshire primary. The other billionaire in the race, Tom Steyer, has not met either threshold. This is according to CNBC. Number 9, GM retreats from Australia, New Zealand. General Motors is accelerating its push to retreat from unprofitable markets by winding down its operations in Australia and New Zealand and selling a plant in Thailand. The latest restructuring of the U.S. automaker's global business will cost it $1.1 billion. About 600 jobs will be lost in Australia and New Zealand, and another 1,500 jobs will be affected at the Thai plant. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said on Monday that he was disappointed but not surprised. Quote, Australian taxpayers put billions into this multinational company, end quote, Morrison said. Quote, they let the brand just wither away on their watch, end quote. This is according to Reuters. Number 10, Sonic the Hedgehog leads the box office with record debut. The Hedgehog led the domestic box office over the long President's Day weekend. It estimated $70 million in ticket sales over its 4-day debut, was one of the best showings ever for the holiday, which this year started with Valentine's Day. The better-than-expected start, which included about $57 million from Friday through Sunday, set a record for the best North America debut for a video game adaptation, beating Pokemon Detective Pikachu's 2019 mark of $54.3 million. Without adjusting for inflation, Sonic made another $43 million overseas. DC's Birds of Prey fell to number 2 with a $17 million haul in its second weekend from Friday through Sunday, and $19.9 million for the full long weekend. This is according to The Hollywood Reporter and CNBC. That's 10 things you need to know today for Tuesday, February 18th, 2020. This has been What Makes You Smarter. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube, username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/Keys Dan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for